A female elephant dies. The next morning, her herd should be moving on, but they don't. Instead, they gather around the body. They touch it with their trunks. They stand silently beside it. Some refuse to leave for days, and this isn't a one-time event. Scientists have seen elephants do this over and over again, which raises a strange question. Do animals actually understand death? Because death is one of the most complicated ideas humans have ever faced. Even children don't fully understand it at first. They often believe dead people can come back, or that death is temporary. So if humans struggle to understand death, what about animals? The answer is far stranger than most people realize, because some animals react to death in ways that look shockingly human. Let's start with elephants. In 2010, researchers studying wild elephants noticed something unusual. When elephants encounter bones, they usually ignore them, except for elephant bones. When they find the skull or tusks of another elephant, they often stop. They touch them, examine them, sometimes for several minutes, even when the elephant died years earlier. Scientists still debate why they do this, but one thing is clear. Elephants treat the remains of their own species differently, and elephants aren't the only animals behaving strangely around death. Crows do something even more mysterious. When a crow dies, nearby crows often gather around the body, sometimes dozens, sometimes hundreds. At first glance, it looks like a funeral, but researchers wanted to know what was actually happening, so they conducted experiments. What they discovered was fascinating. The crows weren't simply mourning, they were investigating. They used dead crows as information. By gathering around the body, they learned whether a predator was nearby. In other words, death became a lesson. A dead crow could teach the living how to survive, and suddenly, those strange gatherings made a lot more sense. But then scientists found something much harder to explain. Dolphins. Female dolphins have repeatedly been observed carrying dead babies through the water, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days. In some cases, the mothers became exhausted because they refused to let the body sink. Researchers have documented this behavior all over the world, and nobody knows exactly why it happens. Is it grief, confusion, or does the mother simply not realize the baby is gone? The truth is, we don't know, because we can observe animal behavior, but we can't ask animals what they're thinking, and that's where this mystery becomes difficult. A behavior that looks like grief may not actually be grief. A behavior that looks like understanding death may be something completely different, which brings us to chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, and their reactions are often unsettling. Scientists studying chimpanzees have observed mothers carrying dead infants for days, sometimes even weeks, long after the body begins decomposing. Other members of the group often become unusually quiet around the body. Some inspect it, some avoid it, some simply sit nearby. One researcher described a group of chimpanzees gathering around a dying female and remaining unusually calm and silent as she passed away. The scene looked eerily familiar, almost human. But here's where things get really interesting. To fully understand death, an animal would need to understand several things. First, that the individual is no longer functioning. Second, that death happens to everyone. And third, that death is permanent. This last part is crucial because permanence is difficult. Even human children usually don't fully understand permanent death until around age 7. So do animals understand permanence? Some scientists think a few species might, especially highly intelligent animals like elephants, great apes, dolphins, and certain birds. But there's no proof. And that's because understanding death leaves almost no physical evidence. We can see behavior. We can't see thoughts, which creates one of the biggest mysteries in animal science. But animals do seem to recognize something important. Many species react differently to dead bodies than they do to sleeping animals. They investigate, avoid, protect, or remain nearby. Something about death is being detected. The question is how much they actually understand. And perhaps the strangest example comes from ants, because ants have developed a completely different solution. When an ant dies, its body releases specific chemicals. The colony detects these chemicals almost immediately. Workers then remove the dead ant and carry it away from the nest. No confusion, no hesitation, no mourning. Just a biological response developed over millions of years. It's efficient, but it's also the complete opposite of what we see in elephants, dolphins, and chimpanzees, which suggests something remarkable. Death isn't experienced the same way across the animal kingdom. For some animals, it's simply a problem to solve. For others, it appears to trigger behaviors we still don't fully understand. And after decades of research, scientists still can't answer the biggest question. Do animals truly understand death, or do they simply react to its consequences? Nobody knows. But the next time you see an elephant touching the bones of a long-dead relative, or a dolphin refusing to leave her dead baby, or a chimpanzee sitting silently beside a fallen companion, remember this: humans may not be the only creatures disturbed by death. We're just the only ones who can talk about it.